Veterans Chronicles is sponsored by the state of Qatar, representing Qatar's commitment to the U.S.
Welcome to Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos, honored to be joined this week by U.S. Army Vietnam veteran and Judge Vincent Okamoto. He is the most highly decorated Japanese American to survive the Vietnam War. And Mr. Okamoto, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your story begins in a very interesting and difficult way because you were born in a Japanese internment camp. Where were you born and what were the conditions for your family at that time?
I was born in Poston, Relocation Camp number 1, and I have no independent recollection of it. My family was interned there for a little over 3 years, so I was like 2 years old when we left camp. But from what I can glean from the stories of my older brothers and sisters, it was kind of a Spartan existence. They lived in barracks, 5 people to a room. There was no indoor plumbing. For toilets, they had to walk through a communal latrine. And for meals, they had to go to a mess hall. So what they described to me most vividly was the fact that everything you did required standing in line for a long time.
Was there any lingering bitterness in your family towards the United States because of all that?
You know, perhaps that's one of the things that I'm most grateful to my family. There was no bitterness. In fact, I'm the last of 10 kids and the 7th son, and all of my 6 older brothers served in the military, 2 with the famed 442nd during World War II. Another brother volunteered for the Marines and fought in the Korean War. So their message and their example to us was, this is our country, and if necessary, we have to fight for it.
Now, years later, you were in college and got involved with the ROTC of a different college. How did that work?
I got a scholarship to University of Southern California for international relations, which is what I wanted to do. And they were drafting about 30,000 guys a month at that point in time. The Vietnam War was really heating up. So I figured, all right, I'll join the ROTC and at least know I'll be able to get my degree. Well, they didn't have an Army ROTC at USC. There was Navy and Air Force. And I didn't want to go into the Air Force, and I didn't have the 20/20 vision for the Navy. So I heard that across town at UCLA, they did have an Army ROTC. So for the last 2 years of my college career, it was kind of grim because I'd have to commute to both schools each day. The one good thing was no matter who won the Rose Bowl, I could get tickets.
After graduation, you're an officer in the United States Army, and then you decided to go to Ranger School. Tell us about that decision.
Well, I figured they were going to send me to Vietnam anyway. So if I was going to go, I'd want to be trained as best I could, serve with the guys that were trained. And I think it was kind of a no-brainer, really. Ranger School, if nothing else, after 9 weeks and losing about 30 pounds, you know how to run a small unit patrol. And for that, I'm very grateful because it certainly helped in Vietnam.
So when were you deployed to Vietnam?
1968, 1969.
Now, the day I'm sure you'll never forget is August 24th, 1968. You were at Dau Tieng. Explain why you were there and what your unit was doing.
We were about a quarter mile from the Cambodian border, and they had picked the location for us to block an infiltration route. And everything seemed fine. I was with a rifle company, and about 10 o'clock that morning, or that night, the most intense mortar barrage I've ever experienced fell on us. I looked through my starlight scope, and I literally saw hundreds of North Vietnamese regulars charging the perimeter. And it got kind of terminal. We fought for about 3 hours, came very close to being overrun, and about a little over 40 guys were killed that night, 40 Americans. They didn't enter the perimeter. We beat them back, but paid a high price for being in that location.
How many did you start with?
About 150 all told.
Wow. What was your immediate thinking when you're under a barrage beyond any intensity you had ever experienced before?
I wish I was closer to a bunker. You hit the ground. Upset because your buttons are keeping you from going deeper into the ground. You know, I for one didn't think about the men or anything else at the time. I just wanted to protect myself from all the metal that was flying through the air. And that lasted for quite a while, because what happened was that the North Vietnamese mortar gunners, and they were good, would walk their shells into the perimeter, and then their infantry would follow the barrage. So what was hard is that when there were still mortar rounds coming in, you could see their infantry coming towards you. So you had to get up and put out suppressing fire. And that was hard for the guys, because there was a lot of shrapnel flying through the air, and now the North Vietnamese are close enough to fire their AK-47. So a lot of metal flying through the air at that point in time. But you had to do it, because if you stayed on the ground or stayed in the bunkers, you'd be overrun. So we had no choice. We stood and fought, because otherwise we'd just get overrun and be killed.
From what I read, you led 5 other men in response to this attack. So what did you do, and how did you do it?
You know, the main attack came on the other side of the perimeter, on the north side. My platoon was responsible for the southern portion. But after the mortars, we started taking so much intense ground fire. I said, something's wrong. When I looked over, 2 of the machine guns on the north perimeter stopped firing. And so I figured they'd been knocked out, and if we didn't do something, the North Vietnamese would come into the perimeter. So I think I had 5 bunkers I was responsible for. I picked 5 guys who I knew would stand and fight rather than pull back. Took them to the northern part of the perimeter, and it was like I thought. 3 armored personnel carriers had been destroyed with rocket-propelled grenades. There was 1 tank there that was on fire, being hit with a rocket-propelled grenade. And the 2 machine guns from the 2nd platoon that was responsible for the northern sector, they were hit with RPGs and grenades. And a lot of the guys were just turned into long division problems. You knew who they were, but you wouldn't recognize them. So myself and those 5 brave men, we held them off for about, I would say about 30, 40 minutes. And we were able to put out enough suppressing fire that we blunted the attack.
Sir, you mentioned some of the other guns that were around, and another part of this story, of course, is you going from gun to gun and dodging a lot of fire. What were you thinking, and how did you manage to do all that effectively?
Each armored personnel carrier, there are 3 of them, carried a 50 caliber heavy machine gun. All the guys who were manning that initially had been killed. So I think I yelled out to my guys, "Hey, when you go man that machine gun," there was no positive response. In fact, one guy just said, "No." It sounds corny, but they teach you in infantry school, don't ask your men to do something you weren't willing to do. We needed that machine gun put into operation. No one was going to go out there and do it, because the lead was flying pretty hot and heavy. So I ran to that armored personnel carrier and climbed aboard, manned that 50 caliber machine gun, which is really an awesome weapon. And I started spraying the North Vietnamese with the 50 caliber, and then ran out of ammo. And I'm high and dry. Everybody's shooting at me because I'm on the top of that APC, and about 30 yards to the side was another armored personnel carrier. So I jumped off the first one, ran to the second one, climbed aboard, met its machine gun, fired that until the ammo ran out. And again, that 50 caliber was, doesn't matter if you're hiding behind a bush or a tree, or that 50 caliber is going to cut the tree in half. One final APC. And I don't know if it was on fire or not. I heard two different stories. I don't recall, but I do recall running to that third APC. And I resumed suppressive fire on the North Vietnamese, keeping out that perimeter. And then the machine gun itself was hit by an AK round, and just the concussion of kinetic energy knocked me back. I went up and the machine gun was jammed. It was that I don't know what the round did to it, but it wouldn't fire. So I'm sitting up there cursing because I can't fire the machine gun. And I looked, and through the flares, I could see a group of North Vietnamese soldiers pulling a heavy Soviet wheeled machine gun. And I knew that if they got set up, they could sweep the entire western perimeter. So I got about 4 grenades from the armored personnel carrier, and they were about 50 yards beyond the barbed wire of our perimeter. And I was able to crawl through a ditch until I got to maybe 10 yards from the machine gun team. I pulled the pins from the 4 grenades and just started pitching them to the other side of the ditch where the North Vietnamese were. And I knocked out the machine gun crew. And I don't know, someone must have been left alive, or maybe it was somewhere in a different position I couldn't see. But having thrown those 4 grenades, another potato masher or North Vietnamese grenade dropped into the ditch. I tried to jump out, but from the waist down, I didn't make it. That grenade went off. I tumbled through the air. I knew I was alive. I didn't know how bad I was hit. But then when I see more North Vietnamese coming in, I got up and I was able to run and limp back into the perimeter. My people helped pull me in. Again, I wasn't hit critically. There was no injury to the bone because I could still fire my M16 and walk around. So we fought for maybe another half hour. And finally, they broke off the attack as it started to get light. And we reestablished the perimeter, redistributed the ammunition, and dragged all our wounded to the center of the perimeter where there was 2 medics working on them. That was a bad night. It was a bad night.
Sir, I want to go back to when you were engaging the enemy on the armored personnel carriers. What kind of protection did you have on those?
2 of them had a turret, and it offered some protection, but your head and shoulders would be above the turret. So I'm one of the luckiest people in the world because I had maybe, 100 North Vietnamese shooting at me. And the rounds were going over my head. They were going on each side. They're pinging off the APC. And I didn't get hit. I mean, the wounds I got that night were from a grenade. But you don't think about things like that. And when the sun came up and the North Vietnamese were gone, I started feeling the pain. But then when I also started thinking about all the AK rounds coming in, and I think literally there are thousands of rounds coming in. And that's when I started to shake and get scared. And I told my RTO, my radio telephone operator, I said, hey, they'll never let me do that again. And he said, sure, I won't.
You also mentioned earlier that you had been shaking. How long did it take you to process what had happened that day?
About, I guess it was about 8 o'clock. Helicopters came in with reinforcements, ammunition, and to dust off it to evacuate the wounded. So by then, the medic had hit me with a little bit of morphine, patched up the bigger holes in me. I jumped up on that helicopter, and that was maybe when I was the most frightened, because we knew the North Vietnamese were in the surrounding tree line. And I was just waiting for a rocket-propelled grenade or AK rounds to just shoot us down. And I was tense. There were 5 other wounded guys in there. The dappled aluminum floor was greasy and oily with blood. And it wasn't until we had reached about 500 feet elevation, which I knew was beyond the effective range of an AK. I sighed a breath of relief and just let the morphine kind of take me away mentally.
How long did it take you to recover from the grenade wounds?
Oh, man. Again, I was really lucky. There was maybe, I think the doc said he took out about 30 pieces. It's kind of interesting because he said, the shrapnel's your body, the muscles will naturally try to get rid of the shrapnel, so they'll move to the surface of the skin. And then you could start popping them out like pimples. And most of them were in my back or my side, but it was true. I was the life of the party when I came home. I said, hey, you want to see me pop out some shrapnel? I go, yeah. Squeeze an arm. I was glad, though, when that little entertainment ceased to exist.
Much more with U.S. Army Vietnam veteran Vincent Okamoto right after the break on Veterans Chronicles. We are back on Veterans Chronicles. I'm Greg Corombos, honored to be joined today by U.S. Army Vietnam veteran and Judge Vincent Okamoto. He's the most highly decorated Japanese American to survive the Vietnam War. We've discussed the horrific events of August 1968, and sir, I wanted to get a little more of an idea of what your duties had been leading up to that during your tour in Vietnam. So what were you and your men doing prior to the events of August 24th?
Initially, I was assigned as a rifle platoon leader, and we just stomped around the jungle looking for North Vietnamese. I then took over a company, a rifle company, where I had 3 platoons under me. Then I went up to S3 to be a battalion intelligence officer, and I worked very closely with the Special Forces on what they call the Phoenix program. So you learn that there's nothing more wretched in the world than being in the infantry. You're just out there slogging around in the rice paddy water and in the swamps. I think one of the hardest things was the war went on 7 days a week. War went on all through the holidays. I think the first time when the monsoon season started, the rain came down. I'm being pelted with these big globs of water. I'm thinking, you know what? In America, when it rains, people go indoors. We're just like bears. we live out there. The only part that's going to be dry is the top of your head because you got a helmet on. But for 19, 20-year-old kids, and that's who I had in my platoon, it was a wretched experience. It took maybe a month before a newbie, an FNG, could be acclimated and also learn the lessons he needed to know. Until then, that's why the new guys were treated so badly, because the old-timers would say, hey, I made it this far, and now I have this stupid kid from back just in the world, he's going to step on a mine or booby trap that's going to kill me, or he's not going to see the firing portable bunker and it's going to get me killed. It was tough on the new guys. It was really tough on the new guys because no one wanted them around. They were afraid of them. And it was a cruel experience, but that was part of the ritual of being in Vietnam. If you were an FNG, you're a pariah until you proved yourself.
So what was it like for you when you were the new guy?
Second lieutenants in the infantry are kind of like being child molesters. No one likes them. Most of the men that you command have more time in country, are more experienced. I had one guy come up to me my first day. I was introducing myself to the men. And this one guy says, I'm not going to bother to know your name, Lieutenant, because probably in the next couple of weeks you're going to die anyway. And we've had 3 platoon leaders in the last 3 months. That's kind of bad for my morale. But when I got more experienced, especially when I got to be a company commander, I get these new second lieutenants and all fat and sassy, wanting to win the war. And you say to yourself, that joker's going to get good men killed until he learns what to do. So, again, it's a rite of passage. You go through phases just like an insect, from the larva to a mature insect. What was bad about Vietnam, from a tactical standpoint, is just about the time I knew my job. I really knew what to do, what to look for, what to expect. They'd rotate you to another position in the rear, or you go home. So it was kind of a revolving door. There really wasn't that built-up experience that they had in Korea in World War II. So, one famous Vietnam vet said that we didn't fight a 10-year war. We fought a 1-year war 10 times. And I think there's a lot of merit in that.
One of the things you mentioned earlier is when you were on the helicopter and you were fearing the helicopter would be shot down because you never knew where the North Vietnamese or the Viet Cong might be shooting from. How difficult was that problem on patrols, and how did you figure out where they might be?
In Vietnam, 90% of the contacts that the troops had with the enemy, the North Vietnamese initiated. If you take 100 men in an infantry platoon and you're literally hacking your way through the jungle, the North Vietnamese will know you're coming 20 minutes before you get to their position. So they'll either set up an ambush or, more probable, they'll pull back, go into their tunnels, or just leave. So it was a never-ending routine of stomping around the jungle, looking for the North Vietnamese, hoping you didn't find them. But again, it was almost an impossible situation for the regular troops. You cannot go through the jungle quietly. These guys weren't Green Berets, they weren't long-range patrols. They're American kids, most of them from the city. So again, the Vietnamese would always know where we were. We never knew where they were until they started shooting at us, until someone stepped on a booby trap.
Mr. Okamoto, you have 3 Purple Hearts that you received from your service in Vietnam. Were they all from the combat we discussed from August 1968?
No, they're all from June to August 1968. After I got hit for the 3rd time, they moved me up to be intelligence officer for the battalion. And it was literally like night and day. I hung out with the guys in the headquarters company. They didn't go on search and destroy. They don't go on night ambushes. They don't go on air assaults. So it's like, happy birthday, Vince, because this is your second chance of life. And the thing that was really hard is that leaving the men that you had served with and fought with, guys that would die for you, I'm sitting back drinking a beer in a battalion fire base, and those guys were still every day, every single day, going on a search and destroy mission. Every third night, going off into the jungle to pull a night ambush. You know what? They were really magnificent. I cannot describe how much pride and how much respect I had for these guys. A lot of them high school dropouts, a lot of them nothing to look forward to when they got back to America. But they were there fighting their tails off, bleeding and sometimes dying for this country that all too often seemed not to care about them.
Did you ever ask to go back to Vietnam?
No, I had my fill of being the infantry. But again, I was with what they call the Phoenix program in the last several months of my tour there, which was totally different, much more effective than being in the infantry. The Phoenix program tried to identify and target what they call the Viet Cong infrastructure, the civilians who were communist agents, propaganda officers, tax collectors, and guides. So when the North Vietnamese would come south down the Ho Chi Minh Trail and then turn left to go into South Vietnam, they were strangers just like the Americans. They needed the VCI to guide them around the American ambushes, to show them where the ammunition and supply caches were. After the war, most of the high-ranking North Vietnamese officers said they feared Phoenix more than an infantry division, because you knock off their guides, they're blind. They're just like us. They're flapping around, stomping around the jungle, hoping to avoid the Americans. But Phoenix became very controversial. Some people said it was an assassination program. Like anything else, I think, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But Phoenix was very effective. Knocked out most of the VCI, and I think if started sooner, it might have had an impact in a different scenario for the war.
After you came home from your tour, what did you do for the rest of the war?
I went to Berlin. I was assigned to the Berlin Brigade for a year, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. Sausage, beer, and being in Berlin, you didn't go out into the field because there was no field. You're in the city. You drive 10 miles in any one direction, you hit the wall. So there was no patrols, at least for the infantry. You had politicians come in every once in a while, and you'd have to march for them. But that was a small price to pay for being in a place where you could smoke at night without worrying about a sniper pinging into your brain. You could laugh out loud. For the young 19, 20-year-old guys coming back from Vietnam, you had all these blonde, blue-eyed German Fräuleins. It was great. It was great.
After the war, you pursued a legal career and eventually became a judge on the Los Angeles Superior Court. How do you think your military experience prepared you for that?
You know, for would-be employers, I think it's a good idea for someone, if possible, to have military experience as an officer, because at 23 years old, you're leading 100 men in the most lethal enterprise that there are. And that's without the normal personnel problems about someone getting a Dear John letter or his mother gets sick and she's back home. The Army experience really helped me. After law school, I became a deputy district attorney and a prosecutor for Los Angeles. But again, I came back in 1970, and the anti-war movement was at its height. So I'm in law school with a lot of these young kids that were wealthy and the son of privileged individuals, looking down at soldiers from the Vietnam War. Too many people had begun to blame the war on the warriors. I didn't like that, being around people like that for 3 years in law school. But, it was just the way of the world at that point in time. It's not like now where someone at the airport will say, thank you for your service.
How did you deal with that? Did you engage with the anti-war students?
Again, I was conflicted. I mean, it made me mad because they didn't know. I think they're just arrogant. They didn't know what their fellow Americans are going through. But at the same time, I said, I should join those protesters because that's a stupid war, and it's unwinnable. And if a young captain can think like that, it would seem to me that most of the administration and the federal government should think of it that same way. And ultimately they did. But like anything else, they tried to put a positive spin to it. But we weren't going to win that war.
Sir, you also started the Japanese American Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Talk a little bit about your passion for that project.
I went to Washington, D.C. for the opening of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in 1982. And I looked and I saw the names of a lot of men that I knew. There was, I think, a stereotype for Japanese Americans. Other people thought they all went to college. They became dentists, lawyers, or CPAs. And yet, we estimate maybe 5,000 Japanese Americans served in Vietnam. I wanted to honor them. So I got together about 9, 10 guys, say, hey, let's do it. And it took a number of years. But now there's a Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Los Angeles at the Japanese American Community Building. So I'm gratified about that.
Sir, we thank you very much for your time today. And most of all, we thank you for your incredible service to our country. Vincent Okamoto is a veteran of the U.S. Army and the Vietnam War. He's the most highly decorated Japanese American to survive the Vietnam War. I'm Greg Corombos, and this is Veterans Chronicles.